All right, let's begin. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session of Design It Day Automotive brought to you by the Yageo Group. In this session, we'll be looking at some trends of passive components for use in wireless and onboard charging. My name is Wilmer Compagnoni, and I lead the technical marketing group at Kemet. So it's not really well known which type of technology is going to lead the future of automotive, whether it'll be a hybrid electric vehicle approach, a mild hybrid, or even a fully battery electric vehicle approach. But what is known is that regardless of which one is the winner, there will be some sort of need for onboard or wired charging. So before I hand it off to our presenter, Pranjal Srivastava, I'd like to remind everybody that you're muted upon entry in an effort to keep the background noise to a minimum. But that doesn't mean we want any questions. We certainly do. So as soon as Pranjal is done with his presentation, he'll answer any questions that came in via the Q&A window or the Q&A section of the Zoom window. So Pranjal, with that, I'll hand it off to you and let's talk about trends in passive components for wired and onboard charging.
Thanks, Wilmer. Well, hello everyone, and I welcome you all to this session on trends in passive components for wired charging. Before starting the presentation, I must apologize that due to a technical glitch in my PC, I would not be able to turn on my video in this session. Nevertheless, the content of this presentation is what matters more, and from that standpoint, there should be no troubles. My name is Pranjal Srivastava, and I'm a field application engineer at Kemet, responsible for the geographic region of South Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. I'm with Kemet for 2 years now, for more than 2 years now, in fact. Prior to joining Kemet, I have 4 years experience as an automotive hardware design and development engineer with some tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers. I hold a master's degree in microsystems engineering from University of Freiburg, Germany. We would start this session by discussing some basics of AC versus DC charging and which passive components are relevant for which circuit module inside these applications. From here, we would move on to DC link capacitors, focusing mainly on film and electrolytic capacitors, and also a small section on when MLCCs become relevant for a DC link application. This would be followed by pulse or resonant or snubber capacitors, where I would be not focusing on individual series, but instead on an application example and would try and show the pros and cons of each passive technology for such applications. This would be followed by EMI plus AC line filtering and magnetics for EV charging. Change the pointer to laser. Right. So the basic electronic principle of an AC and DC charging is the same. Conversion of AC mains energy to DC voltage for battery charging. In AC charging station, this energy conversion is done by an onboard charger, which is integrated inside the vehicle. And in a DC charging station, this conversion is done by a DC wall box charger, which is outside the vehicle. So in the case of DC charging, the battery gets the charging energy externally from the wall box. And in the case of AC charging, the battery gets the charging energy internally from an onboard charger module. Since the basics of electronics remains the same, in terms of requirements for passive components, nothing much changes. As we see on this slide, our offerings in terms of passive components for onboard charger as well as DC wall boxes remains the same, with the only difference being if the components are present inside the vehicle or inside the wall box. In both the cases, we start with the filtering, followed by a rectifier stage, followed by an AC converter and resonance stage, followed by another rectifier and DC output stage. In this presentation, I would be covering the components listed here, focusing mainly on trends that would help you in further system optimization. So let us start with DC link capacitors. And with DC link capacitors, let's start first with film or polypropylene based film capacitors. Trend for DC link capacitors at Chemet includes miniaturization that leads to space savings, low ESL or equivalent series inductance, and better thermal resistance due to smaller size. Our, our, our R&D recognizes that the physical size of film capacitors and high temperature performance along with long lifetime at those temperatures is a crucial bottleneck in designs using film DC link capacitors. So they're constantly working on miniaturization and increasing the maximum operating range of these capacitors, due to which we presently offer temperature capabilities up to 125 degrees Celsius in a miniaturized box version, which we expect to increase even further in the future. Sensitivity to humidity has also traditionally been a challenge with polypropylene film capacitors. And here as well, we have put in efforts to make our film box capacitors more robust to high temperature humidity bias conditions. Press fit connection is also within our plans. And if there is a specific case you have, feel free to get in touch with us. So the two focus improvements we had talked about film capacitors on the previous slide were size of film capacitors and high temperature performance. With our C4AQM parts, which is the next version of our previous DC Link C4AQ series, we have ensured both, continuing with the maximum operating temperature of 125 degrees Celsius, as well as size reduction, because the M in C4AQM stands for miniaturized, which means that this part is smaller and more compact than the previous version. In terms of robustness and quality, it is identical to C4AQM. It is ACQ qualified. In terms of robustness and quality, it is identical to the previous C4AQ DC link capacitor. It's also ACQ qualified and has exactly the same temperature humidity bias qualifications as the standard C4AQ. To demonstrate this further, consider here an application example where 100 microfarads at 900 volt DC operating voltage is needed. So using 10 times 10 microfarad 1300 volt rated film capacitors, the resultant capacitor bank using C4AQM is significantly smaller than using our own C4AQ or competitor parts. In terms of ripple current ability and energy storage per area, as well as volume, the final solution using C4AQM looks like a much more optimized solution than compared with C4AQ or our competitors. Yes, we see that individual C4AQ or competitor B carries a small percentage more of ripple current, but that is the slight trade-off and really very insignificant when one compares with the total space saving, which are much higher in percentage. That's the reason why we have such superior ripple current per area and volume figures with C4AQM. In general, the ripple current ability of our C4AQ parts were at times bit over dimensioned with the actual requirements of the market. So we used this application experience and came up with the C4AQM series that balances out a slight reduction in ripple currents with a significant improvement in size or potential energy storage per unit volume. Having said that, we still do offer the C4AQ series as well. Another advantage that comes with a small size is a lower equivalent series inductance of the part, which means a better high frequency response. So using C4AQM, instead of keeping an MLCC in parallel to filter out higher frequency harmonics, you either do not need an additional MLCC or you need a smaller MLCC, as C4AQM in itself has a higher self-resonant frequency than a conventional C4AQ part, or when compared with some competitors. Another interesting thing to note here, which we also saw on the previous slide, is how small the box size of C4AQM is when compared to a competitor part. And also the lead spacing is similar for the same capacitance and voltage combination. With our electrolytic capacitors, we have been constantly working on further CV value enhancements, longer lifetimes, increasing temperature capabilities. We do presently offer lytic axials or lytic or axial electrolytic capacitors with temperatures up to 150 degrees Celsius and even 165 degrees Celsius operating temperatures. But these axials are not a good fit for EV charging due to their low rated voltages. They are, however, ideal, but for 48-volt traction systems or for low voltage BLDC motor fans and so on. Anyways, moving back to snap-ins, we are also working on additional vibration withstandability optimization. And when I say optimization, I don't just mean an increase, but maybe also decrease if the application does not need high vibration withstandability, as we would see on the next slide. PressFit is a technology that we have already launched for our products, and we have had interesting product updates here as well. Typically for our automotive snap-ins, how we increase our mechanical vibration withstandability is by implementing these anti-vibration grooves and max fit to can design. With our latest ALA 7A 8A snap-in series, we have actually removed the anti-vibration grooves, and therefore it has a vibration withstandability of 10G instead of 20G from the standard ALA 7D 8D series. Main reason for this were requirements from onboard chargers, as they did not need high vibration withstandability, as during charging, the car is stationary. So ALA 7A is therefore cheaper than ALA 7D and gives cost optimization in case high vibration withstandability is not needed. But of course, we do still offer ALA 7D, 8D, as they are still our premium offering for EV charging. Coming to MLCCs as DC link, I think it's a very interesting subject, as ceramics is not a technology you would usually associate with DC link, typically because inverter frequencies at the moment range between 10 kilohertz to at most 50 kilohertz. But with the advent of wide bandgap switching modules, where switching frequencies in future are expected to go really high, then the main determinant would actually be the high ripple current ability and performance at high voltages rather than bulk capacitance. From this graph of a 10 kilowatt converter, we can easily see that for a switching frequency of 100 kilohertz for a 1000 volt application, you do not need more than 200 nanofarads. But at the same time, this power has to be converted. So the stress would all come down to very high ripple current ability and high dV by dt. To optimize your solution, you need a technology that has a high ripple current per nanofarad ratio, and C0G based MLCCs like KC Link are exactly this technology. KC Link, together with Unleaded Stacked Connect, is a product that we have brought into market thinking exactly of this constraint. A quick overview of how different DC link technologies compare, and this comparison is universal and actually not just limited to Kemet. For higher CV value, bulk capacitance, but low ripple current, the right technology would be electrolytics. For highest ripple currents, but low capacitance, perhaps not so relevant now, but maybe in future for DC link capacitors would be also the ceramic technology. For relatively high capacitance values, high ripple currents, good lifetime, low leakage current, medium cost, and medium physical size levels, film is the best solution. This is where the color distribution becomes so interesting here, because as we see, each technology has some parameters where it is green or best, but only film is one technology which, along with many greens, also has many yellows, which means if not the best in some properties, at least it's the second best in those properties. This is the reason why overall film technology is still in many ways the best performing DC link technology in the market. However, for their cost and place optimization, electrolytic capacitors still have most of the market share in terms of volumes. Because of these properties, we are experiencing now that many customers are using a hybrid combination of film plus electrolytic capacitors, where they use film capacitors for ripple currents and electrolytics for bulk capacitance. From DC link capacitors, moving on to pulse or resonant capacitors, capacitors of this technology can also function very well as a snubber capacitor. So instead of talking about our different offerings for resonant applications, I would just jump straight into a single application example and how we solve this requirement using our primary products for such applications: thick metallized or double metallized resonant film capacitors and class 1 dielectric based MLCCs such as KC Links, which I just introduced in the previous slides. Specification is as shown on your screens. An ambient temperature of 85 degrees Celsius, a capacitance of 60 nanofarad. Now, this is where a resonant tank requirement becomes very different from a DC link requirement, because in DC links, you are looking for a minimum or capacitance. And if it exceeds that capacitance, then generally it's not really a concern. But with resonant tank converters, we have to be very specific and accurate with the capacitance that we are looking to achieve. And this is because if we exceed this capacitance, then we have to somehow tune the inductor in such a way that we still reach the resonant frequency, which I have set here as 240 kilohertz. So ripple current expected for this converter would be 40 amperes at 240 kilohertz, and ripple voltage is 440 volts RMS at 240 kilohertz. And now let's see how we solve. Now let's try to find out the trends using the solution to the problem before. So I have tried solving the problem using our double metallized polypropylene film capacitors R76 and R76H and our class 1 C0G dielectric based KC Link MLCC, which has been designed specifically for wide bandgap applications and for applications requiring high ripple currents and less bulk capacitance, as already previously stated. So coming to our film solutions, R76H is the next update from R76, and we clearly see the cost and place optimization as compared to our previous R76 variant. Main reason is high ripple current ability, which also makes it high temperature capable. However, what's interesting is when MLCCs come into the picture here. We all know that such high power resonance systems usually comprise of large capacitor banks with many in parallel and sometimes many in series. Interestingly, many times we see capacitors in series just to lower the overall capacitance, because as previously stated, we need to be accurate when it comes to tuning our capacitors, and we cannot over dimension our capacitor bank. C0G MLCCs have a high ampere per nanofarad ratio, and therefore, as we see here, to meet the ripple current requirements, not many are needed. And this means that MLCC gives you a tremendous potential here to optimize space. Costs with KC Link would be on the higher side, but if you use conventional C0G MLCCs, then you can optimize costs even further. KC Link is a special part, and so it's expensive. Now, why is KC Link a special part, and why is it expensive, or let's say relatively expensive when compared to the other technologies that we are discussing here? The answer lies in the couple of rows which I have highlighted with bold letters as amperes per nanofarad capability and amperes per millimeter cube capability, because this is very crucial to understanding the pros and cons of a technology ultimately for your overall solution. So what we see is that the ampere per nanofarad for R76 looks the best, and actually for KC Link looks the worst. However, when we do an ampere per unit volume calculation, then the story is completely different. This means that although double metallized films offer you a good current ability, but in terms of space savings and also capacitance savings, to avoid also capacitors in series, just to bring down the overall capacitance of such resonant converters, an MLCC based solution, or let's say a class 1 dielectric MLCC based solution, would be ideal and would surely gain more traction with times to come. Technologies such as KC Link hold the key for you when you want to downsize and save on space occupied otherwise by big sized passive components. So now we are done with the part relevant for power electronics, and we move on to EMI plus AC line filtering using capacitors as well as chokes. The main trends in our EMI film capacitors, similar to our DC link capacitors, has been performance at high temperatures, miniaturization, and performance at high temperature humidity bias grades. That's the reason why we presently offer a very versatile safety capacitors portfolio, ideal for a place and cost optimal solution for your wall boxes or for your onboard chargers. With our miniaturized X2 caps like R52 and R53, which offer some of the highest CV values in the market. Our Y2, or when I say CV, I mean capacitance per volume ratio, which means how space effective or how much energy storage per density or how much capacitance density does your product offer to you. And this is why the CV rating of any series is a very crucial parameter to consider when you're looking to downsize your application. Our Y2 offering, R41T, has a temperature capability up to 125 degrees Celsius and is also ideal for being used as an X1 capacitor if performance at 125 degrees Celsius is needed. For X2 with 125 degrees Celsius capability, we have another series which is not mentioned here, but in terms of robustness, R52, R53, as well as FH62 V054 are our best offerings. V054 in FH62 stands for non-halogen free. So we offer this part as halogen free as well as non-halogen free. And of course, the non-halogen free variant is more cost effective. EMI caps are primarily responsible for the filtering of high frequency, high voltage transients, but not so effective against lower frequency harmonics, typically due to lower capacitance values and lower ripple current possibilities. AC harmonic filters like C4AF have higher capacitance values and also ripple current ability, along with self-healing effect, making them ideal for connection in this delta or Y configuration or effective AC harmonic filtering. So whenever you have requirements for filtering out such AC harmonic or harmonics of your base AC signal coming in from AC mains port, then it might not always be that the EMI solution would be the best solution, because along with an EMI, you need an AC specialized capacitor like C4AF to give you the capability to also filter out the lower frequency harmonics because of its superior ripple current ability and also because of its higher capacitance values. So 62 microfarad is already much more than the maximum 22 microfarad offered by R52, for example. Continuing with EMI filtering, moving on to chokes from safety capacitors. For high AC and DC voltage and higher current, electric and plug-in hybrid electric vehicle applications up to 150 degrees Celsius component temperature, Kemet will introduce a range of standard items in May 2021. Here we just want to give you an overview about what you can expect. In total, the series covers around 350 possible configurations to serve as an EMI choke for input or output filtering from 5 to 50 amperes. Specifically for onboard charging applications, there is a good match between the requirements and the series, and also for compressors or other medium drives, the components can be used for filtering. Different core materials linked to a best choice as a compromise of price, size, and frequency range. We have a wide range of core materials to select from depending on your specific requirements, which is quintessential to reaching a cost and space optimal solution. And one more thing, what I can vouch for is that we have a very we have a professional and highly qualified EMI support team that sits in Japan, also with an EMI lab of our own. So if you come to us with your specific EMI problems, because of the wide range of core materials and because of our wide experience with this technology that we have, and when I say we, I mean the company NEC Token, which Kemet had acquired a couple of years, or let's say 3 years ago. So those colleagues of ours have a lot of expertise with this particular branch of EMI filtering. And when you come to us with your specifications, we for sure can look into it more deeply and can come out with the most cost as well as price optimal solution with exactly the core material that fits your requirements as well as fits your cost and space needs. Now, I don't want to go deeper into the details of the new portfolio of chokes that we would be offering, but I would like to briefly talk about dual mode chokes, or as we call them, hybrid chokes. This would be another interesting addition to our automotive choke portfolio. Until now, we have only offered these hybrid chokes for industrial applications. Hybrid chokes have intentionally increased leakage inductance, and this leads to an increase in asynchronous inductance within a common mode choke, which is actually meant for synchronous noise only and not for asynchronous noise. So effectively, you end up with both impedances from a single choke. This way, you could use a single choke instead of multiple chokes, or you could reduce the size of your X capacitor or the size of the differential choke to reduce the asynchronous noise. In all, dual mode chokes offer plenty of design flexibility and open more options for downsizing for a design engineer. I would like to end this presentation with a quick overview of our online simulation tools, which can be very helpful when starting a new design. So KSIM is our tool for simulating MLCCs and other SMD capacitors that we have, including polymer capacitors in terms of S parameters, impedance curves, DC bias curves, ripple current, voltage curves, and so on. You can also combine capacitors together. You can put them in parallel. You can put different technologies, or you can put different SMD technologies in parallel. Overall, it's a very interesting tool. We've had many updates here, and if you have not checked it out, then I would highly recommend to check out this KSIM tool of ours. Then we have lifetime calculator tools for aluminum electrolytic capacitors. Film lifetime calculation tool is something new that we have added some months ago. And this is also a very interesting tool, especially when you're concerned if your EMI capacitor would be able to survive the harsh environment inside a wall box, if it is exposed to all kind of harsh environment conditions like lots of rain, thunder, hot weathers, cold weathers, and so on. So this lifetime tool is based exactly on this temperature humidity based mission profiles. And of course, we have then inductor core loss calculators, we have the fit rate calculators, and we have some other tools as well, which I have not yet not shown on this slide, but for sure those tools can also be very useful for your design. But in general, these tools should cover up most of your design requirements. And with this, I end my presentation. Thank you for your attention, and I hope it was useful and helpful. Over to you, Wilma.
All right. Thank you, Pranjal. Yeah, that was very informative. And at this time, we'll address any questions that have come in through the Q&A portion of the Zoom window. And while I give our attendees some time to perhaps think of and submit some questions, Pranjal, I have a question of my own. So you divided your presentation into two sections, one basically on power delivery and the power electronics requirement. And then another one, the other section was on EMI. And yes. Pranjal, in your opinion, which one is perhaps a bigger challenge to passive components? Like which one of the two do you find it's a little more challenge, a little more difficult to properly design in components for this section?
It generally should be the power electronics section, because power electronics is really one module of your application that gives you a lot of possibilities to downsize. And if you're not aware of the right solutions that can solve your power electronic challenge, then it could mean that your ultimate solution looks very big, because that's where you have the high ripple currents, and that's where you have these fast switching MOSFETs. You have the high temperatures coming in, so you need to downsize, but at the same time, you also need to make sure that that you have enough thermal dissipation happening so that your lifetime is not affected by that. But at the same time, from an EMI point of view, I think the material becomes very important. So maybe it would not be as challenging because we are not dealing with as big components for solving EMI solutions as we are dealing for power electronics. But if we have to talk about EMI, then also the material selection plays a very crucial role, because different materials have different frequency characteristics. And although for downsizing, maybe the power electronics would be the more critical module, still the EMI section would also be a very critical module when it comes to your EMI compatibility. And as we see, the switching frequencies are going up. So again, the EMI module also becomes very crucial. So you have to filter out those frequencies, and therein material becomes more important. So material importance is more felt in the EMI section, and the downsizing importance is more felt in the power electronics section.
Yeah, thank you, Pranjal. And we do have one more question that came in. What about the trends on the magnetics, right? The metal composite inductors, power inductors, and transformers. And I know we focused a little bit on capacitor technologies here, but can you comment on the trends on the magnetic side?
Yes, of course. Because you mentioned metal composite, so metal composite is of course a technology which together with our polymer tantalum capacitors or with our polymer aluminum capacitors, for example, can be a very good combination for your DC-DC converters. In this presentation, I was actually sticking more into high voltage applications, and our metal composite products are more meant for lower than 100-volt applications such as DC-DC converters. And for high voltage applications, yes, I mean, there are many core materials that we have come out with. We have essentially divided our core materials into 3 categories. One is manganese zinc, which is primarily meant for your low voltage application or for your low frequency impedance losses. Then we have nickel zinc, which is meant for high frequency impedance losses, and we have nanocrystal, which covers the complete range that a manganese zinc and a nickel zinc covers, and also nanocrystal has a very high permeability. But then there is also a trade-off between the saturation characteristics of these different materials. And this is why within these materials, we have many different variants, we have many different mixtures. So it depends really on the specific case. But as we move more and more into wide band gap, then I must say that nanocrystal is looking more and more like a choice for the future, or maybe a high magnetic permeability manganese zinc material. I mean, this is a very it's a big topic to cover in itself, to be honest.
Yeah, understood.
Yes.
All right, Pranjal, I think that's about all the time we have for this particular session. If anybody else has any additional questions, you can submit them through the form that's shown on the screen there. And also be sure to check out all the rest of our great Design It Day automotive content brought to you by the Yageo Group. So thank you for attending, and thank you very much, Pranjal.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you.